I thought I was being groomed for leadership. My boss shook my hand, called me indispensable. 3 months later, he fired me for performance issues. It took losing everything to uncover the secret he was desperate to bury. It started on a Thursday morning. I remember that because I'd stayed late the night before finishing a client pitch that wasn't even mine to handle. My boss, Mark, noticed. The next day, he called me into his office. "You've been going above and beyond lately," he said, smiling like he meant it. "I see that, and it's not going unnoticed." I wasn't expecting anything. Just hearing those words was enough to make me sit up straighter. I'd worked at the company for 4 years, quietly, consistently. I wasn't flashy, but I got the job done. And now, finally, it felt like someone saw me. Then he said the words I never thought I'd hear so soon. "We want to move you into a leadership track. You'll be handling bigger clients, training newer team members, and shadowing me more directly." I felt like I had just won something, maybe not a trophy, but something that told the world I mattered. I went home that night and told my wife with a grin on my face. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Mark started including me in meetings I used to just hear about from the hallway. He'd toss me the occasional, "Why don't you lead this one?" like he was preparing me for something bigger. He even asked me to train a new guy, Darren, who just joined the team. At first, I loved it. Darren was green but smart, eager. We got along and I didn't mind showing him the ropes. I figured this was what growth looked like, sharing what I knew, stepping into a mentor role. What I didn't realize then was that every conversation, every late night I spent prepping Darren wasn't building me up. It was preparing him to replace me. But at the time, I was proud, grateful even. I had no reason to question Mark's intentions. Not yet. At first, everything still felt like progress. I was busy, sure, but it was the kind of busy that made you feel important. Mark kept giving me new responsibilities, and I handled them without complaint. I thought I was finally proving myself. But then small things started to shift. The first sign was subtle. Mark stopped replying to my late-night emails. Before, he'd always respond, even just a quick "got it" or "nice work." Now silence. I told myself he was just overwhelmed. Then came the meetings. One day I showed up to a client call I was scheduled to lead, only to find that Darren had already taken it. Mark smiled and said, "Didn't Darren let you know? I thought I'd let him take the reins today. Good practice for him." I nodded, playing it off like it didn't bother me, but it did. I felt brushed aside. More of these moments followed. Tasks I used to own quietly shifted to Darren. Files I created were being forwarded without my name. When I asked about it, Mark would just wave it off. "You're on a different level now. Let the new guy get his hands dirty." Still, I tried to believe him. I told myself that this was what leadership looked like: delegation, stepping back, trusting others. But the pit in my stomach grew heavier each week. One afternoon, I caught Darren at the copier scanning a document I recognized. It was part of a quarterly report I'd written. My name had been removed. I asked him about it, casually. He looked uncomfortable. "Mark said he'd be taking over the reporting structure," he mumbled. "Didn't he tell you?" No, he hadn't. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe this was part of the process, uncomfortable but necessary. Still, I started saving emails, backing up files. I wasn't sure what I was preparing for, but something inside me whispered that the ground beneath my feet wasn't as solid as it once seemed. And deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark wasn't telling me everything. The meeting invite came out of nowhere, just a short subject line in my inbox: "Quick chat, 3 p.m. No agenda, no context. I didn't think much of it at first. Mark and I had regular check-ins, and while things had been strange lately, I still trusted him enough to believe this was nothing more than a routine catch-up. But the moment I stepped into his office, I knew something was off. He didn't look up right away, just kept typing, eyes on his screen like I wasn't even there. When he finally did glance at me, there was something distant in his expression, like a wall had gone up. "Take a seat," he said flatly. He leaned back, folded his hands, and then dropped the bomb. "We've been reviewing your recent performance, and there are concerns." My stomach dropped. "Concerns?" I echoed, trying to mask the sudden panic in my voice. "About what exactly?" Mark tilted his head slightly, like he was disappointed in me. "There have been delays on deliverables, lack of initiative, poor communication. Some clients aren't happy." It felt like he was talking about someone else. I blinked, struggling to form words. I haven't missed a deadline, and communication, Mark, I've kept you copied on every email. If there's an issue, I haven't heard about it from anyone. He waved his hand like he didn't want to argue details. Look, it's not just about ticking boxes, it's about leadership presence, attitude, the way you show up in a room. I sat there stunned. The same guy who had just weeks ago told me I was leadership material was now accusing me of lacking presence. It didn't make sense. But he wasn't interested in a discussion. The message was clear. I was no longer in his favor. I left his office feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. For the first time, I started to wonder, was this always the plan? That evening, I opened the folder where I'd been saving files, emails, notes. Something told me I'd need them soon. Because this wasn't just a performance talk. This was the beginning of the end. It happened exactly 1 week after that performance talk. I got to the office early like I always did. I even brought in coffee for the team, trying to keep up appearances, trying to believe that maybe I was overreacting, that this was just a rough patch and I could work my way through it. At 9:15 a.m., I got another email from Mark's assistant. Can you stop by for a few minutes? I knew, before I even stood up from my desk, I knew. Mark didn't make eye contact when I walked in. HR was there. A woman I barely knew but had seen around during onboarding sessions years ago. That alone told me this wasn't a conversation. It was a conclusion. We've decided to move in a different direction, Mark began, his voice rehearsed. Based on ongoing concerns and feedback, today will be your last day with the company. Just like that. No warning, no final chance. No acknowledgement of the years I'd poured into this place, of the late nights, the weekends, the missed birthdays. I asked what I'd done wrong, even though I already knew they wouldn't give me anything concrete. Mark gave me the same line he'd used before. Leadership presence, team fit. It's not always about performance on paper. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. In that moment, I felt hollow, like I'd been gutted. The office I used to walk through with pride suddenly felt like a stage set, fake and unfamiliar. I packed up my things in silence. A few coworkers hovered nearby, too afraid or unsure to say anything. Darren gave me a sympathetic look but said nothing. He didn't have to. As I rode the elevator down for the last time, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from disbelief. 1 minute I was being told I had a future here. The next I was disposable. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the engine on. I kept asking myself one question over and over. How did this happen? But what I didn't know then was that Mark was hiding something, and firing me was his way of keeping it buried. The first few days after I was fired were a blur. I kept waking up early like my body hadn't caught up with reality yet. I'd make coffee, sit at the kitchen table, and stare at my laptop like I was still waiting for a meeting to start. Then it would hit me all over again. There were no meetings, no emails, no job. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even my parents. I was too ashamed. What would I say? That I got fired for poor performance after being told I was management material? It didn't make sense, not even to me. My wife tried to be supportive. She told me to take a breath, give myself a little time. You've worked nonstop for years, she said. Maybe this is life giving you a break. But it didn't feel like a break. It felt like a collapse. I started applying for jobs the same week, but every cover letter felt forced. How do you sell yourself when you're still questioning your own worth? I kept thinking about what Mark had said. Leadership presence, attitude. Those words echoed like a judgment I couldn't escape. The worst part wasn't the job loss, it was the doubt. Was I really not good enough? Had I missed something? Had I misread everything? And then there was Darren. I checked the company's LinkedIn page one afternoon and saw a new post. Excited to announce Darren's promotion to account lead. Same role I'd been promised. The same responsibilities I trained him for. That's when something inside me cracked. I couldn't let it go anymore. I started going back through the folder of saved emails and documents, not just to defend myself, but because, deep down, a new thought had started to form. What if this wasn't just about me underperforming? I remembered how Mark had changed, how distant he'd become. The deflections, the quiet shifts, the way things had been rerouted behind my back. I didn't have proof yet, but for the first time since I lost my job, I wasn't just lost in pain. I was angry, and I wanted the truth. It had been almost a month since I left the company when I got the message. It was a simple text, just a name and a question. "Hey man, what the hell happened? Alex." Alex and I had started at the company the same year. We weren't best friends, but we'd always gotten along, grabbed drinks after big project deadlines, complained about management over coffee. He was one of the few people I respected there. Honest, smart. He had recently transferred to a different branch, but we'd kept in touch sporadically. I replied just as simply, "Long story." He called me an hour later. We talked for a while, easing into it. He told me he'd heard whispers about my exit, something about not being a good cultural fit. I laughed bitterly. That phrase had become corporate poison. It didn't mean anything, yet it ruined everything. Then his voice lowered. "Listen," he said. "I'm not trying to stir anything up, but have you ever wondered why Darren's name is suddenly on everything?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "I was in a cross-department call last week," he continued. "Someone shared a report Darren supposedly wrote, but I swear I saw your version of that months ago. It looked familiar." That uneasy feeling in my gut came back fast. Alex went on, "And it's not just that. Word is Mark's been moving money around. Nothing official, but people in finance are noticing weird gaps in expenses. Big ones. Some accounts aren't adding up." I sat there stunned. Everything I'd felt, every instinct I'd doubted, it was starting to make sense. "I don't have proof," Alex said, "but something smells off, and you getting pushed out like that, it lines up." That night I opened the folder I'd nearly forgotten about. The saved files, the training documents, client notes, billing details. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for yet, but now I had a reason to look. For the first time, I wasn't just licking my wounds. I was following a trail. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk, every light off except for the soft glow of my laptop. My hands hovered over the keyboard as I reopened every file I'd saved during my time at the company. At first, it was like walking through a graveyard of old work, presentations, training schedules, client reports, all reminders of what I'd lost. But then I started to notice things. Small inconsistencies. There were invoices I'd signed off on that didn't match the versions Darren had submitted later. Entire client proposals had been altered after I'd sent them to Mark, numbers inflated, line items moved around. It didn't look like editing. It looked like manipulation. And when I compared those changes to the finalized versions sent to clients, it hit me. The billing had been padded. Extra consultation hours added that never happened. Premium packages that we never even offered. I dug deeper, cross-referencing internal approvals. Mark had signed off on all of them. Not Darren, not finance, just Mark. The more I uncovered, the more it all started to click into place. The sudden shift in how he treated me, the push to have Darren trained so quickly, the vague performance critiques. It wasn't about me failing. It was about getting me out of the way before I saw too much. I organized the files into folders, before and after versions, email trails, internal memos. I even found one document where Mark had clearly replaced my name with Darren's, but forgot to change the formatting, leaving my initials in the footer. Sloppy. I called Alex the next day and told him everything. His response was immediate. "You need to talk to someone in compliance, now." But I wasn't ready to blow the whistle yet. Not without something airtight. I needed someone inside, someone who could confirm what I was seeing. So I reached out to the last person I thought would respond. Darren. I sent him a simple message. "Hey, you ever wonder why I was really fired?" I didn't expect an answer, but I got one. I wasn't sure what I expected when Darren replied. "Yeah, I do. Can we talk?" We met at a quiet coffee shop the next day. I could tell he was nervous, tapping his fingers on the table, eyes darting around like he was scared someone would overhear. "I'm sorry, man," he said after a long pause. "I didn't want to get involved. I was scared, honestly." I waited for him to explain. He took a deep breath and leaned in. "Mark, he asked me to do things that didn't sit right with me, altering reports, padding expenses. At first I thought maybe it was a mistake, but it was deliberate." I felt a cold rush through me. "Why didn't you say anything? Why let me get fired?" Darren looked down. "Because I was new and I needed the job. Mark promised me a promotion, better pay, the whole package. I thought I could handle it from the inside, maybe even stop it. But instead, I asked quietly. Instead, I got stuck. And when you got fired, I was scared it meant the whole thing was about to blow up. So I kept quiet, hoping it would blow over. The anger in me flared. You should have come to me, we could have stopped him. I know, Darren whispered. I'm sorry. It wasn't just an apology, it was guilt, and maybe relief, because now he was free to tell the truth. We spent the next few hours piecing together everything I had with what he knew. The documents, the emails, the discrepancies, all signs pointed to Mark siphoning money for years. For the first time since I was fired, I felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't just my fight anymore. We had a chance to expose the truth and finally get justice. With Darren's confession, everything changed. What was once a lonely fight became a mission. We started by gathering everything in one place: spreadsheets, emails, altered invoices. Darren gave me access to internal chat logs and some files only he could get to. Together, we built a clear picture of what Mark had been doing: embezzling money, hiding it in fake client expenses, moving funds through shell accounts. I reached out to Alex, who connected me with someone in compliance. I sent over the evidence, keeping our identities anonymous at first. The company launched an internal investigation quietly, but the wheels moved fast. Meanwhile, Mark's behavior became erratic. He was paranoid, calling meetings, deleting files, and barking orders like a cornered animal. I followed the news inside the company through Darren, who was still there but not for long. It was only a matter of time. One afternoon, the call came. The compliance officer told me Mark had been suspended pending further review. The embezzlement was real. He'd been siphoning thousands of dollars monthly for years. It was a strange feeling, vindication mixed with relief, but also sorrow. The man who'd once praised me as indispensable was now exposed as a fraud. The betrayal stung in a way that no job loss ever could. But the best part? Darren was promoted again, this time officially, with a new mandate to clean up the mess. I got a call from HR a week later, offering to discuss reinstatement or a severance package. I declined. This chapter was closed. I told myself this journey taught me more than any promotion ever could, that sometimes the hardest battles teach you your own strength. More than that, it reminded me that truth, no matter how deeply buried, can't stay hidden forever. Looking back, I never expected that losing my job would lead to uncovering something so much bigger. At first, I felt like a failure, fired, blindsided, cast aside. But what I learned along the way changed everything. I learned that people can betray you, even those you trust the most. That sometimes the fight isn't just about keeping your job, it's about standing up for what's right, even when it feels impossible. I learned to listen to my gut and trust myself, even when the world was telling me otherwise. Most importantly, I learned that the truth has power. After the dust settled, I found a new job, not in the same company, but with a team that values honesty and integrity. Every day, I carry the lessons from that experience with me. I'm stronger now, more aware. I won't let anyone's betrayal define me. Mark's embezzlement was exposed, and justice was served. Darren is rebuilding the department with transparency, and Alex still checks in to remind me how far we came. But the real victory? It's mine. Not the title or the paycheck, but the knowledge that I stood tall when it mattered most. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. No setback is the end of your story. Sometimes it's the beginning of your greatest comeback. And when life tries to knock you down, remember, your strength isn't just in holding on. It's in rising up even when the odds are against you.